If your goal is to load a squat, it can be any type of squat. There is no golden rule that says you have to barbell back squat.
I just want to comment on something you said. I know Nsima's got probably a lot of questions because we're so excited to have you on the show today.
I appreciate it.
You mentioned like fundamental movements, and then we think about like a squat. Like obviously a squat is a very fundamental movement. I mean, people have been doing it for as long as people have been around for, right? But it gets to be interesting when we put a barbell on our back. And it gets to be interesting when we start to have, weight that could represent, equaling our own body weight, or sometimes doubling our own body weight, or in some cases tripling or quadrupling our own body weight, depending on how strong an individual is. And something I observed in coaching a lot of people around the country, I saw a lot of dysfunction happening in the upper body, which shocked me. I just never even really thought about it, because as a power lifter, you get in these kind of like rigid positions, and I only need to squat down so low. I don't have to squat down as low as the demands that you had as an Olympic lifter. So it's like, okay, I don't really care. My shoulders are stuck. Not a big deal. I'll just put my arms out wide, and I'll have my stance out wide, and I'll just do this motion, And I used to think like, hey, if I, do this and stay in these positions, like I should be able to be relatively healthy, and unwinding some of this, like how hard could it be, when I get done with my powerlifting career? But now I'm starting to see, and now I'm starting to kind of find out, and it is taking a lot to kind of unwrap this, tight ball that I kind of created to do my sport the right way. But my question is like, how fundamental are some of these movements? Like these movements that we do in the gym, I think we just think they're just these movements, but they're movements that we made up. And like a squat in and of itself is just an interesting movement with the weight on your back and the way that our arms are. And now we have the luxury of having really great barbells where you could put your hands in different positions. We don't have to worry about trying to, overarch or underarch, or like there's a lot to think about when you do a squat. So I guess my main question is like, what are some of the movements that you view as being fundamental? And then from that point, how do you assess and like loading those?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the big thing to understand is, why do we call the squat a fundamental human movement? And it's because neurologically, when our bodies are developing when we're very young, it's a movement that allows us to then explore the rest of the world. You crawl, you stand, you're squatting to get to that stand. If you watch a little baby, they're squatting down to pick things up, and then you start walking and running. So the squat is a fundamental, neurologically developmental movement that allows us to explore the world. Now, the squat then, as we are aging, as we're adults, usually is something that's kept within our movement repertoire. If you go to a lot of different places around the world, people just squat down as they're preparing food. If they're, waiting at the bus stop. My co-author for both my books, Kevin Santana, his parents are from Laos. And he would tell me often that his mom would be sitting in a deep squat just preparing dinner. Yet how many people in America could sit down in a deep squat for more than a minute without feeling just their body just completely on fire? So that's where the movement comes first. And the big thing I always tell people, the squat is a movement ever before it's an exercise for that reason. Now, when it comes to the exercise, it is then how are we applying load to the movement pattern? And where the implement or load is being placed will change how that movement looks slightly. Now, again, you mentioned that there's many different bars that we have. There's no golden rule that says you have to barbell back squat with a straight bar on your back. That's what the sport of powerlifting has gone to.
Thank you very much. I like that.
But the squat can be a loaded goblet. It can be a zercher. There's so many different ways in which you're squatting. Again, as an exercise, it just means we're loading the movement pattern. And then based on where the load is, the movement will take on slightly different changes in order to stay balanced. So for one example, I always tell people, if you want to know whether or not you're performing the squat correctly for your body and your current level of mobility, so not like, oh, you need to get more mobility work before you do this. If you have a bar on your back or your chest or over your head, view from the side and watch where the bar's tracking. If your body is doing it correctly, the bar will track over the middle of your foot and your body weight will spread across your entire foot, the tripod foot, not all your weight in your heel, obviously not your toes with your heels popping up, but you're balanced. So for example, a low bar back squat's going to have the bar sitting across your middle of your shoulder blade.
Power Project family, how's it going? Now on this podcast, Mark, Andrew, and I, we talk about fasting a lot. We talk about the ketogenic diet and a lot of different types of diets. But Bubs Naturals has a product. They have the collagen protein, which is amazing. They have these apple cider vinegar gummies, which are like crack, but they have
they are
these, they have these MCT oil powder packets that I've never used to do this, but in the morning I'll wake up and I'll put it in coffee, and the smoothness, number one, in terms of the mixing is amazing, but the consistency of my energy through the day because of the MCT oil powder is peak. Andrew, how's your experience with it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's like the best way to start the day. You're satiated, you're energized, and you're just ready to crush the day. So if you guys want to get in on this MCT oil powder, head over to bubsnaturals.com and at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save 20% off your entire order. Again, Bubs Naturals, promo code PowerProject to save 20% off. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
A high bar back squat's up higher on your traps. Now, because of that change where the bar's sitting a little bit lower on your shoulder blades, in order to stay balanced, that chest is going to have to tip forward. You're going to have to incline your trunk just a little bit more. And in doing so, the hips are going to go back. The knees are going to be pulled back a little bit more. It's not going to be as upright as a high bar back squat. Same loaded movement, slightly different change in how that posture is. It'll be even more pronounced if we compare the low bar back squat to the front squat. Now, all that does is shift where torque is being placed. The quads are still working hard. The glutes are still working hard. Your core stability is still very, very much in tune, but it changes torque because with a front squat, in order to stay balanced again, keep the bar over the middle of the foot when viewed from the side, the knees are going to have to shift forward a little bit more. The hips are going to come forward. The chest is going to be more upright. Now, power lifters obviously chose the back squat as the mode of competition. A weightlifter, because they're only working on the snatch and clean in competition, often choose squats.
Weightlifters, by the way, only asked to do 2 exercises where power lifters are asked to do 3. So we know power lifters are superior.
But a power lifter, right, only has to, or will compete in the back squat, whereas a weightlifter, they'll use either the front squat and or combination of front squats and high bar back squats usually, because it will more so mimic the demands of their competition lifts. But again, overhead squats as well, that'll change your what that looks like as well. So going back to it, it doesn't matter for just general fitness. If your goal is to load a squat, it can be any type of squat. There is no golden rule that says you have to barbell back squat. But going back to what you were talking about, how you were really, really stiff with the barbell back squat. And then since you're done competing, it's taken a while to sort of undo that to make you more functional, we'll say, right? In part, the stiffness that you did create, though, for powerlifting probably helped you excel in that sport to a greater degree. And I'll give you an example of why that's so important. I know you've had Dr. Stuart McGill on the show before. Stu would always say, you're never going to see a 1,000-pound squatter touch their toes. Why? The physical adaptation needed in order to hoist a ton of weight on their body requires a ton of stiffness. In the same sense, you're not going to see someone who's great at yoga put 1,000 pounds on their back. The adaptation needed to become extremely mobile and flexible has decreased their ability to maintain a lot of load on their body. Now, when we're talking sports specificity, if you're trying to be the best in the world at powerlifting, you're probably going to see adaptations more so to developing that stiffness. Now, does that mean that I don't need sometimes powerlifters to bring their hands in a little bit more? Right? Because if you're super wide, sometimes that can limit how well you're locking in the barbell because you're unable to get those lats engaged as well. I made a recent post with Shane Hunt, who's under Instagram, Hunt Powerlifting.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about, that's another one to follow. Yeah. And Shane was talking about, we were collaborating on how the upper body is so important to lock that in when you're squatting. A lot of people, they don't know, what do I do with my elbows? And elbow pain is a huge issue, especially with my powerlifters who squat low bar. And they don't even realize, well, it's because of the way in which you are holding your body, holding the bar. Ideally, we want to see most people have that elbow in line with the back of their torso. Some people have to have that elbow jutted out like a chicken wing. And some people have to go super wide with their hands because they physically can't get that barbell close to their body. Now, there's a few tricks that you can do in the short term without any mobility changes that can allow you sometimes to bring your arms in a little bit closer. You can take sort of that talon grip where you just are sort of over the top. Joe Sullivan is a good power lifter who shows that right now a lot. And some people will go thumb on top rather than getting their hand under. JP Price, I know you guys know him well. JP would always tell me that was one of the things that helped him take a little bit more of a narrow grip, was to take his thumb out from under the bar. But again, small changes. Are we addressing the overall big issue, which a lot of times, stiff lats, stiff pecs, they're not going to allow that hand to come in close. And for some people, bringing those arms in just a little bit closer can allow you to create a little bit more dorsal stiffness, because you can lock the lats down a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying that every powerlifter has have their hands in real close to their shoulders, but it's about finding sort of what's optimal for you. Because the closer you can bring your hands in from a very wide grip, and you can just try this on your own, have your hands out wide, try to lock your lat down, bring your hands a little bit closer, and you can just feel that lat kicks on a lot more. That lat is an extremely powerful stabilizer for your entire torso when used appropriately. And then you breathe and you brace, you can create much more intra-abdominal cavity pressure. Like Dr. Stuart McGill always says, the more stabilization you can create in your core, the more power and force you can unleash in your legs. So it can really help out with that as well. So that's a long-winded answer, hopefully, to your question.
So Power Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.